All righty, you guys can go on and have a seat. You're so multi-talented, Arlene. Multi-talented. That wasn't you? Soundtrack. All righty, well, we are still in the book of Exodus, just beginning. We are in chapter 3, I believe. Yep, 3. And we are on verse 11, if you want to kind of get there. So remember, we're walking through Exodus. Moses has now left Egypt. He has gone to Midian, and he has become a shepherd. And at this point, last week we kind of finished up with him on Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai. And he has seen the burning bush, and God has told him do not come near, to take his sandals off. Remember the two things that God tells him, right? It says, "I'm holy," and worship me. And so you kind of have that idea. And then so we kind of come down, and then we kind of finished up with verse 10, where it says, "Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." And so in just one verse, God kind of explains basically the whole book of Exodus, right? You can just say, hey, 3:10, there we go. We learned about Exodus, and now Sean can be quiet, right? But we're going to elaborate a little bit more, right? So he gets this plan. You're going to go to Pharaoh, and my people are going to come out of Egypt. But then tonight, we'll start at verse 11. And so after God says, "Come, I will send you to Pharaoh," he says in verse 11, "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?'" And so it's very interesting. Moses said to God, right? So you have the burning bush, and this is not kind of the first kind of conversation, but you have God in this bush, they're talking, and so God says, "Hey, let's go," right? Let's do what I'm calling you to do. And we see Moses instantly saying to God, I don't know about that, right? Which is really interesting, because even though it's the book of Exodus, even though we're at kind of the very beginning, this has already been prophesied about. Moses already knew about this moment. He might not have knew that it involved him. He did not know all the things that were happening, but because he was a Hebrew, because he would have been learned, he would have heard scriptures, especially having so many Hebrews in Egypt. He would have known about Genesis chapter 15. Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14. This is a prophecy that God gave to Abraham, but it was Abram then. It said, "Then the Lord said, 'Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be their servants there. And then they will be afflicted for 400 years, but I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterwards they shall come out with great possessions.'" And so there's a prophecy given all the way back with Abraham, when he has this kind of covenant call that God says, "I'm going to keep you, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to make you a nation, and there's going to be some hiccups, you're going to be enslaved for 400 years, but you're going to come out, and I'm going to punish that nation." Well, what's funny is in the verses before what we just read, God just explained that again. Should have kind of set off a light bulb. Okay, well, God's already said this, okay. I understand might not want to be me, but Moses said to God, "Who am I?" What's interesting about this, in the next couple verses, I'm going to maybe challenge something that you may have heard of your whole life. I want you to think about this next kind of conversation in maybe a different way than maybe you've heard before, maybe in a Sunday school class or something like that. When he asks, "Who am I?" There's a lot of play on words that we're about to get to in the next couple verses. And so what's interesting is the word "I." The word "I," it's all no-key in the Hebrew, which you don't need to know that. But this word "I" is an important word, and we're going to see it play all the way through chapter 3 and all the way even into chapter 4, hopefully we'll get to tonight. But when he says, "Who am I?" who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? He's asking the question, who is I? Who is I? That's what he's really asking. He's not saying, well, who should I be to go to Pharaoh? What he's really asking is, who's going to Pharaoh? Is it me or is it you, right? Remember, if you go back to chapter 3, the first couple verses, everything is about God says, I'm going to save them. I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to be deliverer. They're my people. We have all these possessive pronouns of God. And then in verse 10, he says, come, you shall go to Pharaoh. And then the next verse where we pick up today, he says, who's doing the saving? Who's going to Egypt? Who's doing this? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Now, Genesis chapter 46 says this. He says, then he said, I am God and the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes, right? So he's talking to Jacob. He's talking to Israel, another kind of prophetic text before Moses even thought of. But in this whole time, in the Hebrew, we see this word Anoki, and this word I. And it's not just like we have one word that means I, right? In the Hebrew, there's several words that mean I, and they all come with different connotations and different thoughts. But it's interesting that it's this word. And in the Hebrew Bible, we don't see that word again until right here, Genesis chapter 3, verse 11. Who am Anoki? Who is this person that's going to be the saving? So when you're reading this, remember we talked about Exodus is not a book to read alone. You're supposed to read Genesis and then move right into Exodus. If you were reading this, you're reading this verb, and then you see Anoki again. It's going to point you back to what was the last time I seen this? Oh, it was when God said, I will take you to Egypt. I will pull you out. I will make you a great nation. So we have this I. And now Moses asks, well, who am I? Right? He's not saying, well, not me. And he is trying to get out of it, let's be honest. But he's saying, who's going to do the saving here? Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children out of Egypt? And he said, God said, but I, Anoki, there's the word again, I will be with you, and this shall be a sign for you that I have sent you. So once again, we get this, but I will be with you. Now, when you put this, I will be with you, when you put all that together, and I told you at the beginning, you're not going to learn a lot of Hebrew, but this is an important one, okay? So you get in this, I will be. It's the word of ha-yah, okay? Not hey-yah, okay? It's ha-yah. It's how you pronounce it, ha-yah. And it's going to become important in just another verse, right? So when you put this word, I will be, okay? It creates the statement, I am. So you know where we're going with this, right? So ha-yah, you have this word. But I will be with you. That word means I am, I come, I be. Moses is asserting that he cannot do the saving, but then God is asserting that he will do the saving, okay? So when you read this and he says, who am I? Moses is saying, oh, I can't go to Pharaoh. I have no power. I'm nobody in Egypt. I've been gone for 40 years. Like, I can't do this. And God says, no. I'm going to do it. You're just going to go. I'm going to do it. Okay, so that's kind of the conversation that's going on. He said, but I will be with you, and this shall be a sign for you that I've sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. Now think about this for a second, okay? And this is where there's going to be a lot of questioning of maybe some beliefs that you've had before on this passage. When God says, I want you to go to Egypt, and Moses says, who is this I, right? You ever have this idea where somebody says we and you say, do you have mice in your pocket? Like, it's kind of the same question. Like, when you say we, you're not including me. I'm not going. And so Moses is saying, who's this I, right? And so God says, I'm the I. But then he says, he gives him a little comfort. And I'm going to give you a sign. I'm going to give you a miracle. I'm going to give you a proof. I'm going to give you a reason to show you that I will be with you. Okay? So here, he saw a burning bush. He heard the voice of God. And he's still questioning, is God going to, who's doing the saving? Is God going to have the power? And then God says, I'm going to give you a sign. Now the question that you have to ask to this sign that God's going to give him on what he says, what's the sign? The sign is, when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. There's two conclusions that come with this verse. Most people are going to read this and they're going to say that the sign that Moses gets is that when Israel is freed from Egypt, they go through the Red Sea, they go through the desert, and they arrive at Mount Horeb, at Mount Sinai, and they worship God after the Ten Commandments, and they go into a covenant relationship with God, okay? Now, my question to you is, if you believe that's what it means, and that I'm going to say probably a majority of people think that because that's the way that we read it in English, what good is that to Moses? Moses is questioning, am I the guy to go to Egypt? I'm not big enough. Who is this I? God says, I'm the I. I'm good enough. I'm going to save. And I'm going to give you a sign to know that I'm the God that's worth and more powerful than Pharaoh so that you can go. Does he give him a sign that's going to happen a long time after the fact? The sign that he goes through, he does everything. He does the plagues. Egypt gets released. They go through the Red Sea. They walk through the desert. They end up at Mount Sinai. They get the Ten Commandments. They enter into a covenant relationship. That's a long time for Moses to say, well, man, that was a great sign. That encouraged me when I was talking to Pharaoh, right? That's probably not the sign you were looking at. Today, we would say something like this. Give me a sign that I should do whatever, right? Fill in the blank. Give me a sign that I should buy this car. And 10 years later, God gives you that sign. Did you buy that car? If you're a guy, yes. If you're a girl, no, right? That's just kind of how it works out, right? You want the sign to give you proof that God is in it, that it's okay, and that you would do it. So when God says, I'm going to give you a sign, but he talks about going to Mount Sinai, to the mountain of God, and worshiping, it's probably not what's reeling. Or it could be Moses will know that God is with him because that he has worshiped on the mountain of God. He knows that God is with him because of the burning bush, and confirmed again after Exodus when Israel comes back to Sinai, right? So what the difference is when he says, I'm going to give you a sign, the sign is either Israel leaving Egypt, going through the Red Sea, coming back to Mount Sinai and worshiping, and then the sign's complete. He knows that God was with him. Or the sign is worshiping on Mount Sinai, having the burning bush, hearing God's voice, hearing that he is holy, hearing that he should worship him, hearing the future of what Israel is. That's the sign. That's the courage that I need. So I will go to Pharaoh, and then when I go to Pharaoh, then then Israel will be released. We'll walk through the Red Sea, and eventually when he comes back around to Mount Sinai, he will remember that's where the burning bush is. This is where I met with God. And now you have a completed idea, right? So when he says, I'll give you a sign, the question is the sign the burning bush, or is the sign solely Mount Sinai? I will say, Pastor Sean would say, that the sign is the bush, is the burning bush, and when he comes back around and completes exactly what God says, and they come back to Mount Sinai, that completes the sign. But to say, I'm going to give you a sign of courage and not give you that sign until basically all the work is done, that's not a great sign. God, he needed something. He needed to hear from God. He needed something visual from God. So to have that completion on the end to say that's the sign is probably not the best kind of exegetical way of looking at that text, right? So maybe you think differently, and that's okay. We're going to get into a lot of things tonight that's going to say, you know what? Nobody knows until we get to heaven, all right? So, but If you ask God for a sign, I would hope that he would give you something beforehand to prove, not until all the way afterwards. That wouldn't help you, right? So you shall serve God on this mountain, verse 13. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? So we get this idea, right? So he says, who am I? I don't have enough power. Who is the I that's doing the saving? God says, I have the power, right? And now the second question is, well, what's your name? Who am I supposed to say this to, right? But notice what's happening. Notice what he's asking here. Moses is anticipating a question of validity from who? From Israel, not from Pharaoh. He's always questioning. We're going to see this time and time again. Moses was never scared of Pharaoh. He was always scared of God's people, of Israelites, right? And so here he says, when I go to Israel and I say, your God has talked to me, and this is what he says, he says, well, what shall I say? What is his name, right? And when you read this, there has to be several questions that come up, right? And this is a lot of reading through the Bible. You know, we read a lot and we know the story. We watch Charlton Heston, and so we skim through this. But when you read this story and it says, well, okay, what is his name? This has to bring up several questions. One, does Moses anticipate the question from Israel? Does Moses think that when he goes to Israel, Israel's going to say, you must validate what God's name is, okay? Is that a question? Is that something that they know? Does Israel know the name of God, right? Israel's there and says, hey, what's the name of God? You say you talk to God, what is his name? And Moses is like, well, I don't know. What do you guys say his name is? Does Israel know the name of God? Have they forgotten the name of God? So there's some questions that come here. Is this question supposed to test Moses? Is there kind of like a cool kids club where there's a secret handshake or a knock, right, that you have that you would get into the ceremony, that you would get into the Christian club, that you would get into the Israelite club? When he goes to the Israelites, what is his name, right? What is his name? And so, or the last kind of question it brings up is Moses asking for his own benefit so that he can say of the name. Does Moses not know the name of God? And so here, when Moses says, what is your name? What am I supposed to tell Israel? We have to ask as readers, why is he saying that? What's the point? What's going in Moses' head, right? What would cause him to think of this? And the reality is we don't know. We can speculate, and there's a lot of speculations. Many times throughout the book of Genesis, we learn a lot of names of God. There's a whole lot of names of God at different time, and we're going to go through those in a little later. And so every time that God does something new or big or powerful, we learn a name of God, right? We get all kinds of the names of God. Maybe they're looking for a new name of God to verify. Maybe Israel's been in slavery for 400 years and they've honestly forgot. Maybe Moses doesn't know because even though he was a Hebrew, and even though he was raised by his Hebrew mother for pay, right? Remember, God worked that out. But maybe after this kind of 40 years of Egypt, now 40 years in the wilderness, 80 years old, maybe an 80-year-old forgets a thing or two. Maybe. I don't know. Do they? And Sherry says, yeah. All right, so we're going with it, right? Right? You just kind of have this idea, right? But you think, Moses lived 120, so 80. So that's like, it's really like the 60, right? So do 60-year-olds forget things? I don't know. I forget where my sunglasses are all the time. And they're on my head. So you never know, right? So we have this idea, and so we ask God, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, and we all know this, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me. So, I am. All right, we learned that word, right? I am, I will be. We learned that word is the word haya. When you get to I am who I am, The Hebrew is Haya, Asher, Haya, okay? And it's just, I am who I am, right? It translates pretty good. What this is interesting is because when we read this, and when a lot of people read this, and even when it's preached, a lot of people will say that this is the name of God, right? Moses asked, who shall I say him is? God says to Moses, I am who I am. My question to you is that the name of God? Is God's name, I am who I am? Aya, Asher, Aya. We never, ever see this name used ever again. Not until Jesus, in the book of John, where he says, before Abraham, I am, right? We see Aya, we see it again. But we never see it again. We never see an ideal where Moses tells Israel God's name. So is this the name? You would think that we would see this more often, right? Even in the Hebrew Bible, we would see Aya, Asher, Haya. We never see it ever again. So my question to you, in your thoughts, is I am, is that his name? All right, so and I'm going to give you an answer. I'm going to give you Sean's answer anyways. So what does this mean, right? What is I am who I am? What does it mean? I would say it does not seem that I am who I am is a name itself, but it's a preparatory comment, right? You can't just read one verse. It says who I am what I am, but there's a verse that comes after that's pretty important, right? So he's kind of doing a little preparatory work. The word I am who I am means I will be who I will be. I create what I create. I do what I do. There's a lot of different ways that Haya is translated in the Hebrew Bible. But basically it all means the same, right? That God is who he is. He does what he wants. He creates what he creates. There's nobody before him. There's nobody after him. He is the final authority, right? So it doesn't really matter how you kind of transliterate that word. It all means the same. But if this was the name of God, you would think we would see it again, time and time again in Scripture, right? Now, some people will say if you take Haya, Asher, Haya, and you take those and you take the vowels out. In Hebrew, there is no vowels, which is why it's a terrible language to learn, because every word can be a million different words, right? You just move the vowels around. And you read left to right. No, you read right to left. And it makes it even more complicated. But when you do this and you take out Haya, Asher, Haya, you can get the letters that spell out Yahweh, right? You can get that. And so some people say that's how Yahweh got kind of pushed together, because nobody wanted to say the literal name of God. And so we see that Yahweh becomes Haya, Asher, Haya. The problem with that is we have the word Haya, or we have the word Yahweh in the book of Genesis 160 times before we learn the name of God, I am who I am. So it becomes a problem, right? That word has already been given. It already means the Lord, or Adonai, how it is pronounced in Greek. And so you kind of have this idea, it is I am who I am. Is that the name of God? Or is it something else? Well, I'm going to keep going, and we can maybe discuss it in a second. And so when we think about this, I am, what does all this mean? It means that God's identity is unconstrained. It means that he will be who he decides to be. It means that he's decided to free whatever. Basically, it means that God is radically free. If you would have asked an Israelite, who is God? If you were to ask a Jew today, who is God? They would not say Yahweh. They would not say, I am who I am, okay? You know how they would tell you who God is? They would tell you the Exodus story. That is the definition of God to a Jew. Even today, if you say, well, who is God? They're going to tell you the Exodus story. That is, the whole story in the part is the name of God, is who it would be. We can even say, we talked about John chapter 8, 58, just to give you the reference. Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham, I was. Jesus was claiming to be the I am, right? The Haya, Asher, Haya. He was not called Jesus, but Lord Jesus in the New Testament. And so this becomes important because Jesus is Yahweh, and that'll make more sense in just one second. God said to Moses, I am who I am, and he said, say this to the people, I am has sent you. That word I am is the word Haya, right? Is the word Haywa. The word, which is interesting, you take Yahweh in the Hebrew, and you take Haya, I am in the Hebrew. Both words come from the same root word in Hebrew. Okay? So these two words they come from the exact same root. What does that mean to you? They're the same word. Okay? If you have the same root, it's the same word. You're just adding on pretext and you're adding on some endings, right? So you're just kind of figuring out, balancing out some vowels. But you have I am and you have Yahweh. They come from the same root. So when we say, what is the name of God? I would say the answer is not I am who I am. That's an explanation. It's a preparatory comment. But what is the name of God? The name is Yahweh. It's something that's already been settled and talked about 160 times in the book of Genesis. Remember, Exodus does not stand alone. It is the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy were written by one person. That's Moses. He knew the whole story before he started writing, right? Before God came to him, infused with the Holy Spirit, and so he penned this. So it's not like he wrote Genesis and then he learned the name of God and then he changed. He already knew Yahweh was the name. This is after the fact. So he's telling the story. Now, if you think I am who I am is the name of God, that's okay. You're still saved. It doesn't matter. We'll all find out when we get to heaven, right? I'm just saying when you read this in Hebrew and you look at the word of I, you look at the word of Haya, when you look at the word of Yahweh, when you look at all these, they're all literally plays on one word, right? They're all just, because when you take out all the vowels, what are you seeing? You're seeing Y-H-W-H literally all the time. I mean, all the time. You're seeing it just in these couple of verses. And so they're all kind of a plays on a word. So, what is God's name? I'm going to stick with Yahweh, and hopefully I'm going to show you tonight why I think that at the end of chapter 4. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, Yahweh, right? Not I am who I am. There's the word. The Lord, Yahweh, or Adonai, which translates to the Greek, right? Lord or master. Say this to the people, the Lord, which he names him, the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. We've seen this time and time again, right? God is always remembering the past, right? He's always calling them back to Abraham. He's always remembering how faithful he was in the past and how he has continued to be faithful. This is my name forever. What was his name? The Lord. Yahweh, right? Now I am who I am. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you in what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Termites, Jebusites, the land flowing with milk and honey. So we have all this, but notice he says this, I promise. Remember, if you already read through Genesis, we see these promises time and time and time again, right? We see a promise at the fall of man, right? He says, I'll tell you, the heel shall crush the head of the serpent, right? We see a promise with Noah, I will never make it rain again. We see a promise with Abraham, I'm going to bless you and make you a nation. And these are called covenants, promises that are in the Old Testament, but you've seen this time and time again. And now, once again, in Exodus, you're reading through, we see another covenant, another promise that God has given. And I promise that I will bring you out of affliction, right? And I'm going to take you to a good place. I'm going to take you to Canaan. All those ites are just tribes in Canaan, Canaanite territory. And so they're there, and they will listen to your voice. Verse 18, they will listen to your voice, and you, the elders of Israel, shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of your Hebrews, has met with us, and now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to our Lord our God. Now here's a question. Did God just want them to be released for 3 days? No, right? He ultimately be released, right? That was his ultimate plan. It's kind of like, when you're a kid, you would ask for 5 cookies, but you're okay if mama just gives you 1, right? That's how we operate, right? That's how we operate. You're like, okay, 1 cookie is better than 0. Is that what God's doing? Is he kind of lying, knowing that he wants for eternity his people to be released? And so he says, hey, just give me 3 days. And this is not God lying. This is God giving Pharaoh kind of the easiest okay. Hey, you go to Pharaoh and you ask for 3 days so that you can go out and worship God. And when Pharaoh says no, and then we're going to see in the next chapter, God will turn up the heat, right? The things will start to go. And so he says, you ask for 3 days, and then to go out and to worship me, and let's see what happens, that we may sacrifice God. Verse 19, notice this. This is great. Just imagine saying this to your kids, right? Hey, I want you to go do this. I want you to go ask for 3 days, but verse 19, but I already know the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So he's saying, Moses, I want you to go and ask, but I already know the answer is no, unless I step in, right? So he says, go ask for 3 days. Just go ask for the easiest thing, right? For just 3 days to go out and worship me. But I already know he's going to say no. I can already see down history, already know what's going to happen. He's going to say no unless compelled by a mighty hand, unless I, God, will step in. Verse 20, because you're going to ask for 3 days, it's not going to happen unless I step in. So I, God, will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. A little prophecy, right? What wonders? The word wonders is the word signs. We're going to see that same word in Hebrew. It's also called plagues, right? It's the same word, just translated in different ways. And I will do all the wonders that I will do in it. After that, he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty, but each woman shall ask of her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house for silver and gold, jewelry and clothing, you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians. So he tells Moses, you need to go to Pharaoh. You're going to ask for 3 days to go out and to worship me. He's going to say no unless I step in. So what am I going to do? I'm going to step in, and you're going to be released forever. Remember, I just promised you a couple verses ago. But when you go, you're not just going to get released, but when you go, the Egyptians are going to feel so bad. They're going to feel so bad they enslaved you for 400 years. They're going to be willing to give you anything. So women, do what you do best. And ask for jewelry, right? Ask for jewelry. You just ask for people, and what happens? Your neighbors are going to give you everything so much that you can't wear it, but you're going to start piling it onto your children, and that you're going to have so much that you will go, and we see that so that you shall plunder them. This word we've already seen several times in the book of Genesis. It's a war word, right? To plunder, it means that there's a victory, that a war has been fought, a battle has been won, and the victors are coming out and they get the spoils. They get everything that is left. And so here, in a very short time, in a talk of Moses, go for 3 days. You're not going to get 3 days. You're going to become victorious. Egypt's going to feel bad for you. They're going to give you everything. And basically, there's going to be a war, and you're going to walk away like you're victorious and you've defeated Egypt. Now, remember, all this has been prophesied, right? We've already talked about that. And what do you think Moses thinks? No way, right? No way. It's what we would think, right? I mean, it's what I would think if God came to you and said, you're going to become the richest man in the world. No way. This is not going to happen, right? It's unbelievable. But that's what Moses is thinking, right? It's unbelievable. Now, verse 4, then Moses answered, even though it's chapter 4, this conversation is continuing, right? So it's kind of continuing on. Then Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. Who is he talking about? Israel, right? Not Pharaoh, not Egypt. You see, he keeps coming back, right? He can't get over it. He's not scared of Pharaoh. He's scared of his own people, right? He's scared of his own body, his own nation, his own church, right? It's what he's really done. But behold, they will not believe me. Moses was concerned with Israel recognizing his authority and not Pharaoh. Then the Lord said to him, verse 2, "What is that in your hand?" He said, "A staff." A staff, right? He's a shepherd, remember? 40 years, he was in Egypt, had all the good things. He's gone away. Now for 40 years, he has been working. He is the chief shepherd of his father-in-law's shepherd herding business, right? He's got it going on. And so God says, "What's in your hand, Moses?" Moses is a shepherd. He has his shepherd's staff, right? We already know what Egyptians think of shepherds, right? We talked about that last week. They're horrible. But they have this staff. And what's interesting, when you read this and then you come back and kind of do like a little devotional thought, it's amazing how God always uses the ordinary to do the extraordinary, right? He chooses a staff. He chooses Moses. I mean, even though Moses lived in Egypt and he had a great education, God could make somebody bigger and better and, in all the things that would have been great. But he chooses Moses, right? A murderer. Somebody that is lived in a household of a Hebrew and an Egyptian, kind of, almost like a half-breed, not trying to figure out what's going on. It was a murderer, ran away, now he's a shepherd. Well, what's in your hand? It is something just ordinary. Just think about that. God's going to use the ordinary to do some amazing things that we're going to read over the next couple weeks, right? Just think about what kind of plagues God could send, right? Look at the person next to you. You think to yourself, man, God could have done better, right? You could have, right? You could have done better, right? You think about that. If God wanted to send a plague, he sends frogs, locusts, sores. These are all ordinary things that God uses to do extraordinary things. Frogs isn't a big deal until there's billions of them, right? Then they're a big deal, right? And this is kind of the story, right? So when you're reading this, you're picking up on these things and you're saying, a staff? I mean, why wouldn't God send a plague of, the things that we read about in Revelation, right? Like these headed beasts and horns and, just these horses with stingers, and you're like, man, this is vicious, right? I think I'm just going to send frogs today. It'll be all right. Really? That's kind of lame, God. You're like, it's kind of weird, right? But he uses the ordinary to do extraordinary. What's in your hand? A staff. And he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. Now, we've seen this, right? This is the good part in Charlton Heston's movie, right? He turns it down, and it becomes a cobra, right? And it becomes a cobra, so much so that Moses, it tells us that he's scared, and he runs away. So it's not like a little weak cobra. It's like a real deal cobra, right? This is something that had been very common. Asp would have been the real ones. Egyptian asp was actually the technical name. But what's interesting is, why did he turn his staff into a snake, into a serpent? Well, if you would know your Egyptian theology, you would understand that what does Pharaoh wear on his head? A headdress. What does it make him look like? A cobra. Makes him look like a serpent. You'll see in Egyptian theology and Egyptian history that snakes, they're famous, right? A snake, a cobra, a serpent is the power of Egypt. It is the symbol for power. It is the symbol for the house of Pharaoh or the dynasty of Pharaoh. And so here, what's happening? God's taking a stick, a staff that's used as a shepherd, which Egyptians hate, and he's turning it into a symbol that when Pharaoh sees it, is like, so you're saying that your stick is more powerful than me? The Pharaoh? Yeah, right? And so there's a little symbolism here, right? So he turns it into a serpent, and Moses runs from it. But the Lord said to Moses, put out your hand and catch it by the tail. So he put out his hand and caught it and became a staff in his hand. Now, don't get me wrong, Moses is really wrong in a lot of ways, okay, in this conversation. Who am I? What should I do? I can't blah, blah. He's giving a lot of excuses. But let's be honest. If there was a cobra right in front of you, and I told you, pick it up by the tail, would you pick that thing up by the tail? No. I mean, I got 2 snakes that live in my house. I'm not picking up a cobra by the tail, okay? I'm just not. That's weird, right? You're just going to do that. A tail is the most dangerous place to pick up a snake. You pick it up, it's going to turn around, it's going to bite you, right? You pick it up close to the head, apparently within 8 inches of its head, so it cannot turn and strike. What's funny, little tidbit of information, just so you guys feel like you learned something tonight. A cobra's fangs stick out the side of its mouth when its mouth is closed. So a cobra does not have to bite you, it just has to go by you. If a cobra moves across you in direction, you will be envenomated. It's kind of cool. Just a little tidbit of information, National Geographic for you. But when he says, catch it by the tail, hey, Moses knew. He's been a shepherd for 40 years. He's seen cobras his whole life. He's been raised in Egypt, right? He's seen cobras. He knows what cobras are. And realistically, he probably has seen a lot of people handle cobras. But now this God, who's he's questioning, says, pick up this cobra by the tail, the most deadly place. But he has faith. He actually does it. On for you, right? So don't hate Moses quite yet, right? So he's still figuring out who this God is, but there is some faith. There is some things going on there, right? Pick it by the tail. So he does, and it became a staff in his hand again. Verse 5, that they may believe that the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you, right? So he says, I'm going to give you a sign, right? And he's giving a sign to who? To Israel. If I ask that, just say Israel. You're probably going to be right tonight, right? Remember, this is not a sign for Pharaoh, even though he'll do this to Pharaoh, but he's talking about the Israelites. The Israelites aren't going to believe me, right? Take your staff, drop it down. It's going to turn into a cobra. Pick it back up. It's good. And so Moses does it. Boom, it picks it up, right? And so he says, God tells him, tell them the God of Genesis is with you, right? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? We have this, right? Verse 6, again, the Lord said to him, put your hand inside of your cloak. And he put his hand inside of the cloak, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. So it's kind of the idea of wearing a cloak on the outside. You would stick his hand on the inside of the cloak. He would pull it out, and it would be white with some kind of disease. Now, we say leprous because it's the only way we know how to translate it. In the Hebrew Bible and in the Greek Bible, the word leprous is kind of our word cancer today. Everybody's got cancer of a lot of different things, and a lot of different cancers look a lot of different ways, right? So leprosy is not, when we think of leprosy today, if you've seen a picture of it, if not, Google it, it'll bless you. It's not the same thing, okay? It's some kind of disease, we don't know. It's just kind of just a skin disease, right? He would have put it in, he'd have pulled it out, somehow, some reason, his hand would have been white enough that people would have known, oh my goodness, this is terrible, right? So he puts it inside his cloak. He took it out. Behold, it was leprous like snow. Then God said, put your hand back inside your cloak. So he put his hand back inside the cloak. And when he took it out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you, so now we have a serpent, we have leprosy, right? But if that's not enough, if they will not believe you, God said, or listen to the first sign, that they may believe the latter sign. If they will not believe even these two signs, listen to your voice. You shall take the water from the Nile River, pour it out on the dry ground, and the water that you shall take from the Nile will become blood on dry ground. Right? We kind of know this, right? This is really the first. This is one of the first plagues we see, right? But here, notice, this didn't get demonstrated, right? It's God. He's still on the mountain, right? He's still on Mount Sinai. He's seen the serpent. He was scared. He's had leprosy. Now he's good, right? But this one, God just tells him about. We don't see this to come out. We don't see this in play, right? Just say with your mouth, this is what's going to happen. You take it out. You pour in some blood. Now, blood, of course, means what? It's life, right? Life or death, right? It's kind of, no matter, it's what it means today, it's what it means 3,000 years ago, right? So what's interesting about this is this idea, and we'll get more into it on the actual plague, but blood being water, which is life, turning into blood, which is death, right? You kind of have this idea of what's going to happen. So things are going to happen. What's interesting, though, about these three signs, these three miracles, these three wonders, these three plagues, if you will, what is it? The first two are transformation, right? Remember, he's talking about Israel. He's talking to Israelites. I'm from God, and God is with me, and God has a better plan for you. I don't believe you. The serpent, right? And he takes something that's nothing, and he turns it in. We see a little creation there. We see a little something, right? God's over it. Picks it back up, turns into a staff. Leprosy, right? Creation once again. Something was good, something was bad, something was good again. Sound familiar? Something was good, human race. Something was bad, human race. Something was good again, the human race after Jesus, right? You kind of see this idea, right? It's transformative. It has this. But then the blood, the third one, you take out water, you pour it on the ground, becomes blood. What is this? This is what we would call a judgment. Almost any time that you talk about blood in the Bible, it's always pointing to the idea of judgment, right? And so it's the idea of saying the Egyptians who worship the Nile, we talked about that, right? The life-giving Nile, all of their gods flowed from the Nile and were bathed in the Nile, the life-giving source. What was happening? God was going to take the Egyptian life and what? And turn it to death, right? So we can kind of see an idea. It was a judgment. What they were worshiping, God will kill, right? So Egyptian believed they were life. He will eventually vanquish them. He will give them judgment. And so just kind of interesting when you think about these signs. And he said, "Oh, my Lord," Yahweh, but he said, "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else," right? So now we're on to another excuse, but this isn't really excuse, right? Send somebody else. And basically, you know what that means? I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. That's really what it is. Right? You have the question, who am I? Who's going to do the saving? And what is your name? These are all, they're bad excuses, but they're kind of a legitimate excuse. But now we get to this one. Please send somebody else. I don't want to do it, right? Have you ever told God you don't want to do it? Everybody shake your head yes, right? We all do that all the time, right? We do that, right? And so he says, God, please send somebody else. Then notice this, and the anger of the Lord. That's a bold statement, right? You have a guy that God has called. He's on a mountain. He sees the burning bush. He's heard the voice of God. He's been there. He's done that. And he says, he's giving all these excuses and eventually says, okay, God, but I don't want to go. Just send somebody else. Pick somebody else. Anybody else. And what happens? God has anger. So when we say, have you ever told God no? Yes. Do you think God is angry? Yes. Right? It happens, right? God has a will for us, and when we don't do it, there is anger. There's holy anger. When the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? And what's interesting about this is, right, he gets mad. God is mad at Moses. To send anybody else, but then it kind of looks like God's like, fine. Aaron, you know Aaron, right? He's coming, right? Your brother, right? Okay. That's going to be your other guy, right? And what's interesting about this is really a sin that I think we fall into a lot, even though we don't know we're falling into it. God tells us to do something, and we don't do it. And we experience wrath, we experience anger, we sense some displeasement of God. But then what happens? We get somebody else with us, right? We pull somebody else along, and we think to ourselves, man, I'm so glad. I feel better that somebody else is with me. But what happens? If Moses would have listened to God, who would have got all the glory? Who would have got all the blessings? It was Moses. He wasn't just sharing the workload. He wasn't just sharing just being alone and pulling somebody, but he's also now sharing the glory. He's sharing the blessings. And you'll see if you continue to read, Aaron, even though he's his brother, even though he's a great guy, Aaron caused him a lot of trouble, right? Moses is on the mountain talking to God, getting the 10 Commandments. What is Aaron doing? He's building the golden Chick-fil-A cow and the idol, right? He's in there worshiping everybody, right? Later on, right, what happens? Aaron's kids, what? Start blaspheming God, right? And then you get to Numbers, and what happens? Towards the end of Moses' life, what does Aaron do? He leads a mutiny against Moses. So it goes all the way back to the mountain, and God says, I pick you, and I've called you to do this. I don't want to do this. Please just let somebody else do this with me. If I had a friend, I would be okay. And God says, fine. You take Aaron. Yay, I got somebody. I'm not alone. Not everything's going to rise and fall on me, but you're sharing the blessing. You're sharing the glory. And probably what's going to happen is that person that's along with you is going to cause you trouble over and over and over again. It wasn't what God first wanted. You didn't accept that, right? We do that all the time in so many ways. But is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? Which is kind of a rhetorical statement, being that we already know that Moses was a Levite. So why would he say that? Because we're going to find out Aaron starts the priest line, right? So it's just a statement in there to say the priest line is going to come from a Levite, a little prophetical statement. I know he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you both what to do. Now, what's interesting about this is what? Aaron's still not speaking. It's God speaking to Moses, Moses speaking to Aaron, and now God is in the mouth of Moses and Aaron, right? So it didn't really matter if Aaron was there or not, because God's still doing all the work. He's still doing all the saving, right? But you just kind of have that. It's interesting when you see this. I don't want to do it. You're not doing it. God's doing it. You just got to have faith and go. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take it in your hand, this staff with which you shall do the signs. Notice that. You shall be his God, right? So Moses is talking, or God is talking to Moses. Moses is talking to Aaron, and Aaron is talking to the people. And so to give a semblance, we can see that what? That to Aaron, Moses is like God, right? God is conveying his message and is going down, right? So you kind of see a step of what's happening there. Did I skip something? I feel like I skipped something. Did I skip something? I did. Y'all didn't even say anything. I knew I did. I was like, where'd it go? I skipped verses 10 and 11. Where y'all been at? Let's go back. I'm sorry. Y'all didn't even say anything. Y'all was like, whatever. This guy don't know what he's talking about. Verse 10. But Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. Now, I know many of you have heard your whole life that means stuttering, and it can be, okay? It could be. I don't think it means that. When you truly translate, when you look at the Hebrew, when it says that they're slow of speech and tongue, it means that I am heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue. That's the true translation. What's interesting about that is that if you go to Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 5, we see in that verse, he says that I am not sending to a place of a different language. And in the Hebrew, you know what it says? Heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue. It's the same words, but here in our English translation, sometimes it gets chosen as stuttering or whatever, but there it's a different language. And so maybe Moses did stutter, right? But we know in Acts, we know in Hebrews that he was an eloquent speaker. He was intelligent, so it doesn't really lend itself. If he even was a stutterer, it probably would have got corrected under Pharaoh's money and teachers and power. Okay, he would have probably worked that out. But probably the reality is that now he has been shepherding in Midian for 40 years. He is now 80 years old. You may know a language. If you don't speak it for 40 years, how good are you going to be at that second language? You're not going to be good at all, right? You're just not. It's impossible. So when it says that he is heavy of tongue or heavy of mouth, Pastor Sean is going to say that Moses is saying that I've been talking to sheep for 40 years. I'm a redneck who lives out in the desert. I'm not worthy. I don't know if I can speak Hebrew and Egyptian well enough to speak to millions of people and convict them and to move somewhere, to go along, to follow me, right? And so when it says that, and we look at Ezekiel 3, the same words that's translated in that same, maybe he was a stutterer. To me, I think it's a harder stretch. But it's the idea of, once again, him giving another excuse. Yeah, I can't speak to a million people. I speak English, and if you told me to speak to a million people tomorrow, can I just be honest? I'd be pretty nervous. I would, right? You would. I think anybody would, right? And so that's kind of where it's at, right? So I'm slow of speech and tongue, and the Lord said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not Anoki? Is it not I? Is it not I, the Lord? Therefore, go, and I, Noki, I am, will be with your mouth and teach you that you will speak. And so he says, oh, you can't speak? Oh, who creates humans? Who makes them speak? Who makes people deaf, blind, lame? Who makes anything, right? Oh, it's I am. Oh, okay. Well, who does this? Oh, it's I am. And guess what? I am going to be with you, right? It doesn't matter if you can speak, you can do it, right? And then we get into where we skip to, that he said, please send somebody else. And then we're just going to quit there on verse 18 as he's going back to Jethro. And then that will be a good stopping place in verse 18. So we see Moses in this idea is kind of going, and he's giving excuses. Every excuse, what is God doing? He's saying, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I am. But yet, we still do the same thing, right? 3,000 some odd years later, God wants us to do something. God tells us to do something. God wants us to do, I can't do that, God. I can't do that. God's like, I know you can't. I can. Just need you to go. Just need you to have the faith. And I need you to show that this is what's happening, and I will take over. But yet we still fall from the same sin that Moses did. Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you so much. We thank you that as we look at the beginning of Exodus, even though it's a slow beginning as getting out, we can see you moving. We can see you from the very beginning of Genesis, and already we can see you toward the Messiah, Father, that all these little things, that you would choose a shepherd to lead a group of people to bring them to salvation. Father, it points my mind to Jesus Christ, the great shepherd, who comes and leads a people, a nation, a group of people to salvation. Father, we thank you. We thank you so much that you don't give up on Moses and that you don't give up on us. That time and time again, you ask us to have more faith. You ask us to follow you. You ask us to trust us. But we just keep giving you excuse after excuse. Father, help us to have more faith. Help us to truly look at you and to understand that you are bigger than our problems, that you are bigger than our ordinary self. But you are the God of the extraordinary, that you are the God that just needs us to faithfully reply, I am here. Here I am. Father, help us to be bigger and greater than Moses. That when you call, we will respond in faith because we know that you are the great God. Father, we love you and we thank you so much. In your name, amen. God bless. Don't forget...